Okay, I was going to show you how to work a problem in Wiley for Chapter 3. If you go to the Read, Study, Practice tool in the Wiley tool set, and I just chose the problem set, self-study, and I've already loaded it up. Here it is. Um, uh, just a small trial balance, and then a few um, instructions on how to make the entries. So let's just enter those. It says the first one is supplies have been used during the month, $600 worth of supplies. That tells me how many supplies were used, so that's my adjustment right there. The balance was $1,700. I really don't care about that right now. The consumption of an asset to generate revenues is an expense. And I can't remember if I chose this or not. Let me try again. Supplies expense. There we go. If you type it all out, it won't work. It has to be, they have to choose their little thing. Utilities expense but not paid, incurred but not paid, is going to be $200. And this is an accrual. This right here was a deferral. This is an accrual. So if we're paying somebody else and it's accrual, then it's going to be debit and expense and credit of payable. All right, the next one says insurance policy is for 2 years. It's a $2,400 policy, 24 months, so it's going to expire at the rate of $100 a year. Again, it's an asset, so it's a prepaid deferral. So prepaid insurance. Let me scroll up a little bit or down or something. The next one says $400 of the balance in unearned revenue remains unearned. All right, in this case, unearned service revenue had a balance of $2,100, but there's $400 left at the unearned at the end of the month. That means I have to figure out the difference between this and $400, which I think is $1,700. I'm going to reduce that account. It's a liability, so unearned service revenue, I'm going to debit it for $1,700, and I'm going to credit service revenue for $1,700. The difference between the balance that was showing at the beginning of May and my unadjusted books, unadjusted trial balance, to the balance as it should appear, $400 is the balance that remains at the end of the month. May 31st is a Wednesday. Employees are paid on Fridays. They have 2 employees who are paid $900 a week for a 5-day work week. Get there in a second. 2 employees, $900 each for a 5-day work week. That's $1,800 between the two, for the both of them. Let me get to a blank spreadsheet here. So per week, they're $900. Oops, $900 times 2. So that's $360 a day. And Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and that's $1,800. But back again, it says May 31st is a Wednesday, so we're going to pay them. We need to accrue Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Let's just take off Thursday and Friday. And the accrual needs to be $1,080. So salaries and wages expense, 1080. Salaries and wages payable, 1080. The equipment has a 5-year life, no salvage value, depreciated at $210 a month for 60 months. They give us the amount of the adjustment, so we're set on that. Depreciation adjustments are always like this. Depreciation expense is a debit. Accumulated depreciation, and this is for equipment, not for buildings, 210. Remember, this is a contra asset account that lives right in the balance sheet, right under the asset that it works with or works against. Equipment has a account number 149. Accumulated depreciation is 150. So you'd see the debit 12,600 and now the credit of 210 here, showing that the book value is the difference between those 12,390 at this point. And finally, the last adjustment says invoices representing $1,800 of services performed but not billed need to be entered as an adjustment. So we'll debit accounts receivable for the $1,800 and service revenue 1,800. I think that looks pretty good. Without double checking, let's just see what we got. So we're good here. The scrolling is what takes so much time here, but it says enter the totals from the trial balance as beginning account balances. Post the adjusting entries to the ledger accounts. Cash. And let me show you how I do this. I'm going to make this guy a little bit smaller. There we go. Cash has a balance of 4,700. Oops, my mistake. It's a balance. Accounts receivable has a balance of 6,100. Supplies has a balance of 1,700. Prepaid insurance has a balance of 2,400. Equipment has a balance of 12,600. Accounts payable has a balance of 4,200. And we know this is a credit balance, even though it doesn't give us one column or another. Unearned service revenue 2,100. Salaries and wages payable doesn't have one. Common stock 17,600. Service revenue has a balance of 8,400. Supplies expense, nope. Salaries and wages, interesting. They don't have it listed as salaries and wages expense over here, but we'll take it anyway. Rent expense 1,500. Okay. Now our adjustments. Let's go back up here. Supplies expense and supplies. Debit 600, credit 600. So supplies we're going to credit for 600. Right. Which leaves this 1,700. This 1,100. Supplies expense will be a debit. The next one is utilities expense, accounts payable, $200. And I forgot to do my balance up here. Insurance expense and prepaid insurance, $100. So I'll find my prepaid insurance. I'm going to credit it for 100. Next one is unearned service revenue. Debit is 1,700. Service revenue credit. So unearned service revenue. Just make sure my numbers are right. Oops. 100. Salaries and wages expense. Salaries and wages payable, 1,080. I can probably do that in my head, but just to be safe. Depreciation expense, accumulated depreciation, 210. So this is where we come to the contra asset account as a credit, and the expense account as a debit. And I think there's one more, right? Accounts receivable and service revenue, 1,800. Just making sure. Okay, I think we got them all. I could have made an error somewhere. Let's just check. Oh, look at that. I subtracted instead of adding, so my mistake. Did that not submit it? There we go. Okay, so the next one is a adjusted trial balance. It's going to be for a moment in time. So it's going to be May 31st. Again, I'm going to bring this thing down, and we're going to do it a little bit. We're going to cheat a little bit. Cash. You're not going to adjust cash. Accounts receivable. $7,900. Supplies has a balance of 1,100. I think prepaid insurance was a balance of 2,300. Yep. Equipment has a balance of 12,006. It didn't change. We don't adjust equipment, by the way. And here's where you put accumulated depreciation. I was going to check my amount here. 210. Accounts payable 4,400. That was where I made my error a minute ago. I think it has a balance of 4, but let's check and see. Balance of 400. Common stock, not adjusted. It'll never be adjusted. Service revenue, 11,900. And then we had a couple extra accounts up here that need to be put in there. Supplies expense, depreciation expense, insurance expense. Okay. Supplies expense was 600. Depreciation expense was 210. Insurance expense was 100. Salaries and wages expense was 4,380. Well, looks like I've missed a line here somewhere. Cash. Accounts receivable, supplies. Prepaid insurance. Equipment. Accumulated depreciation. Accounts payable, unearned service revenue. Oh, salaries and wages payable. That's the one I missed. So let me do this. This is where we get back to salaries and wages payable. Finally. $1,080. Now I can go back to the bottom and finish out salaries and wages expense. We have rent expense, which is 1,500. It wasn't adjusted. Then we have utilities expense, which I think was 600. Utilities expense was 200. Very good. Now let's just add up our little trial balance. next one. You can hear my Doberman Pinscher in the background, right? Okay. It took me just a second to figure out that I'd made a couple of errors in entering these numbers, but once I got them all entered, correctly anyway, I think we're right. Okay, we're good on that. So that takes us through from an unadjusted trial balance up here through the adjusting entries down to the ledger, and finally taking the ledger balances and putting them in a trial balance and making sure that we balance. I do like this of having, after in common stock or dividends, whichever one is the last one, have the revenues and then expenses all in order down here, because then you can take this part of the trial balance right here. I don't know if I can highlight it. Take the revenues and expenses, and that'll make your income statement, and it just makes it a lot easier, a lot cleaner. I'll show you as we work on a 10-column worksheet in class, but that is the way you do one of these guys in Wiley. With all the errors I made and everything else, it turned out okay.